Hey everyone, Dan Kaufman here, Sport Techie's Managing Director. I hope you are enjoying Sports OS. I have the pleasure of sitting here with Dave Nugent. Dave is a fantastic gentleman, and he's here to tell us about a launch of a new company. And actually, last week at SPJ's Dealmakers, this company was launched. Next League is the name of the company. Dave, tell us what it is.
Thanks, Dan. So Next League is a technology services company. We focus exclusively on the sports media, health and wellness industries, and we provide everything from strategic oversight to design and the development and deployment of technology for companies in those industries.
Well, that's what's happening now, but let's go back, Dave, and then figure out how you got here. Why don't you take us back a little bit, tell us about your experience within the sports industry, and then bring us up to close to today.
Great. So this will be, I'm just going to show my age here. This will be my fifth company that I either founded or co-founded. The most recent ones were in the sports space, the sports or sports media space. Most recently in 2009, I co-founded a company called Omnigon. Omnigon was a technology services company focusing on sports and sports media. Sounds familiar. We ran that business until 2016 when we sold it to Infront Sports and Media. Infront is a very large sports marketing company in Europe. They do rights management and sponsorship. And we worked together with them for the past 5 years. And then in Q1 of this year, I decided it was time for a change. So stepped out of that business, took a little bit of time off, and started hearing from the market that there may be an opportunity to do something a little bit different. That was sort of the genesis of this business.
Well, you mentioned Omnigon. Is Next League a next-gen Omnigon?
In a way it is. I mean, I think the things that we were very good at, being a services company, being technology agnostic and thinking about service first, there are a lot of companies in the tech space, obviously, that are focused on building, selling products and platforms. Being a business that focuses on the assembly of lots of technologies and then operating that technology is a little bit different. So in that sense, it is the next generation of Omnigon. What's different is the technology, right? We're in Web 3 now. I have been around long enough to have lived through Web 1 and Web 2. And in Web 3, there's a whole bunch of new technology that needs to be addressed by the types of people we've traditionally worked with. And we think we're well positioned to do that.
Well, I've seen your messaging reference that the next version of digital and technology is here. And obviously here at Sport Techie, we cover that intersection of sports and technology. What really does that statement mean, and why should people take note?
Well, look, our position is that there's a gap in the marketplace. The market is flush with companies that have focused on the ability to deliver products and platforms specifically that serve the sports and sports media space. There are fewer businesses like the one that we used to run and the one that we're launching now that are focused on being the connective tissue for those things. So the glue, we call ourselves sort of the glue guys, the people who help first think about what should be done with these technologies, help run the evaluation of, we used to call them bake-offs, this platform versus this platform, this product versus this product. As you know, for a large sports property, they could have dozens of vendors inside of what they are doing in terms of delivering experiences for fans. So our ability to provide thought leadership first, guidance in general, and then the ability also to, in some cases, build bespoke technologies, so mobile products and things like that. But in other cases, just make sure that we're acting as a program manager, making sure all the pieces come together the way they're supposed to, and then often manage and operate that technology on behalf of the partner. What we have found traditionally is they either don't have the internal technology expertise to do that, or they don't have the bandwidth to do it. So some combination of those things has led us to, again, what we think is a position in the marketplace that is a technology agnostic position. It's primarily just our job is a partner of mine named Doug Perlman, who we worked with for years, coined the phrase, we get you 90% of functionality for 50% of the price, right? So how do you know which things to choose not to necessarily overbuy on the tech side, but then also be able to operate those things efficiently so that you can meet the goals of the organization. That's kind of who we are.
I'd love to really dive deep on what you think sets Next League apart, like from other companies that might be in the space.
So in discussing, the opportunity that we saw in launching this company, there were two things that kept coming up as we talked to the marketplace. One was there are a lot of companies in the tech space selling things, right? But not a lot of companies providing thought leadership. So we sort of coined this idea of the value equation. So the value equation is, it's not just knowledge, right? It's knowledge plus context is value, right? So we all are bombarded on a regular basis with a ton of information about all of the latest, greatest technologies that are out there. Access to the information is not the challenge. The challenge is understanding what it means to the individual client, in our case, that we're working with. So that context matters a lot. So it's that first, and we're thinking of that as thought leadership as a service is the phrase that we coined. Mm-hmm. The ability for somebody to become a part of our universe, which gives them access to other clients who have similar challenges that they have, but also there's a for us, by us creation and consumption of content, right? So these are very specific things, probably much more specific than what you guys are typically talking about, the broad universe. In some cases, this will be about specific technologies or specific org challenges that a lot of these businesses have. So there's that thought leadership. How do we learn from each other in this ecosystem? And then the second part of that is being a service first organization, right? We're not hawking our own goods. So how do we become the primary service provider, the most important service provider for the types of companies that we had traditionally worked for and will be working for as we move forward, which is just quite frankly, a different position to take. Now, that is not to say that there's nobody else in the marketplace that can provide technology services, right? There's the Deloitte and PwCs at one end of the ecosystem, and then there are startups who were like us when we first started at the other end. But the combination of experience and living in a very specific world, right? We only live in this world, in this sports world, we think makes or at least uniquely positions us in the space.
Interesting. Thought leadership as a service. I like that. I recall in our discussions before this that members can actually participate in the content itself. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we used to run a client summit every year, and at the client summit, we would get all of our clients together, and you might think, well, these guys compete for fans with each other, but they really don't for the most part. And at the beginning, when we first started running these, I'd get up, or one of my partners would get up, and we'd give this pithy opinion on what tech was and why they should listen to us. And like halfway through that first summit, one of the clients grabbed me and was like, we really want to talk to each other, right? Like the value here is us actually having a conversation with each other. So as we were thinking about launching this business, we thought, well, what if we enabled that all year round, right? Like what if we empowered this group of people to have a real-time conversation? Some could be published, some might be, pushed out to social, but a lot of it will be in a closed ecosystem where they can feel comfortable about providing their opinion on a new piece of technology or the way you consider building out your org or whatever the challenges that they're facing. So that was the genesis of that. And the plan is that whether it's video or podcasts or newsletters or whatever, the clients that we have will be participating in real time, which will add a lot of value to that content because it's real. It's the world that they live in.
Interesting. And you mentioned social media. Is there actually a content distribution concept that's built into the service?
Yeah, look, we're probably going to over-index on making sure everybody's comfortable, right? Because, and all the same people, there's a comms department inside of every large sports organization that's going to be careful about what gets projected out into the world, right? Especially when it comes to opinions about, this tech versus that tech. But that said, we think part of the role that we can play is in building the public persona, the social persona of these thought leaders inside of these organizations. It's something we actually focus a fair amount on, and can help them. They don't have, again, this is a bandwidth thing, right? They don't have a lot of bandwidth to build their own personality inside of social, and that's an important part of their job if they're an executive. So that'll be a piece of it.
Interesting. If you can, give us a sense of who your client is. Is it the rights holders, the teams and leagues? Is it the brands? Or is it all the above?
Yeah, it's interesting. So it used to be primarily rights holders, right? Because we were in Web 2, it was about content distribution, right? So who has the rights? There was some article content and photo content, photo galleries, things like that. But primarily this was about who owns digital rights. And that's usually in North America, usually leagues. Leagues are governing bodies. This will be a little bit different. So I guess the easiest way to think about it is, let's use NFTs as an example, right? There's a little bit of a Wild West going on, right? Because you can, in theory, you can mint anything, whether you're a league or a team or even an individual driver or player or whatever. So there's probably an opportunity. We're one of the things that we're doing a little bit differently this time is we're actually making investments in technology companies and tech startups. Primarily, there's a little bit of a social impact piece of that. So they're primarily founded by women or people of color. That's the angle we've decided to take on that. We think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there. But one of the companies that we're looking at right now, we're very close to doing a deal with, is an NFT platform. So can that NFT platform help at both ends of the spectrum, right? We think they can actually probably at all segments, because anything that you own, as long as you have that ownership, you can mint and create some kind of again, I'm just using NFTs as an example. Right. So we'll probably go a little bit further down the food chain, if you will, than we did, when we formed Octagon. And then we're also focused on the health and wellness space. There's a lot of conversation going on around mental health in sports specifically. And there are a couple of companies that we've actually made investments in that space. And as you know, health and wellness now, the overlap with wearables and sports, there's a tremendous, there's a lot of, again, connective tissue there. So we think it'll go into those brands as well. There's a lot more, in our view, a lot more opportunity because of the breadth of the challenge in this new world than there might have been when we were really focused on, how do you make sure that streaming the Thursday night football game for the NFL is going to work. This is more complex, at least on the surface, it's more complex than that. So that's where we think that opportunity is.
Yeah, interesting. Well, you mentioned social impact. Let's talk about it. I want to spend at least a few minutes on it. It's an important part of your brand message. Tell us why that is.
Look, one of my partners, Dan Mannix, and I have joked about this. We're old white people, right? So like this is it's a strange message. I think what you'll find in the coming weeks and months is that there is a piece of that will resonate across the board. We do feel, especially in the sports business, that there is an underserved community out there that we can lead by example. Part of that will be the types of people we hire, but some of it will also be making sure, for example, that 5% of the time that our staff has each month is dedicated to some form of give back, whether that's go back to your high school and mentor or teach about digital tech or whatever. We're not gonna mandate what it is that they do, but we feel strongly that that's an important piece. We also want to work with the clients that we sign up to make sure that a piece of the money that's generated as a result of working together is going to some mutually agreeable cause. So we're not going to necessarily mandate that, but I can tell you that a few that we're close to, one of the advisory board members for Next League is a woman named Elise Saul, and Elise is the board chair for Women in Tech. So we feel strongly about that topic. So, that's a potential avenue. We think it's important that as we do that with clients, that it's a reflection of what's important to them as well. And, that really does span the gamut sometimes, but those are the types of things that we're thinking about. We think that, look, there's an altruistic piece of that, but then there's also just the piece that when, a services company is a talent company, right? It's a people company. And if you want to attract the best talent, especially younger people, they work for things beyond a paycheck, right? And we're smart enough to know that we're in a position now in our own lives where we can afford to do that. But B, it's the best way to keep a team of people motivated and pushing towards a goal. What we do is hard, right? These events take place at night and on the weekends, and we often are asking people to run through walls on our behalf. So having something that's cause-based beyond the paycheck, which is important, but not the only thing that's important, we think that's going to matter.
Well, you recently wrote a book called Zero Sales: Generating Services Revenue Without Selling. And I think that a lot of what you talked about today is, similar business principles. It sounds like you're applying to Next League. I'll ask this question: did the book lay the groundwork for Next League, or was it the other way around, vice versa?
No, the book laid the ground in some ways. Look, these are things I've been around a long time, right? So like these are things that have these thoughts that became a book are probably things that have permeated other aspects of the way I've conducted business for a long time. But in finishing this book, going through this process of sort of, and all of us do this on some level, right? You think of something, you jot it down, and then over time, you just have this sort of collection of beliefs, maybe. And I took those and tried to assemble them into a story arc, right? Something that sort of makes sense, hopefully, that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, but also that has meaning relative to what I've been able to make a career doing. And as I finished doing that, I was talking to Mike Rushin, who's the other co-founder of the business, and he was in the process of launching an effort called Fearless Plus. And Fearless Plus, the general idea is that we have kids. He has 3 kids, I have 3 kids, and his idea was there's a lot of really important things that go on in life that are not taught in school. So is there a program that we could build that is focused on things like goal setting and the ability to develop a fearless attitude towards life that is beyond analytical knowledge. So we started talking about those things, and we were kind of like, well, what if, the idea that long-term revenue success or long-term services revenue success, if you believe, as I do, that is really based on who you are ethically and that you've built trust amongst a community of people over time, and at the same time, you have the ability to think about thought leadership and knowledge and how you transfer that knowledge. And you can build a business that both helps the people that work inside of it think that way, but also the clients that it serves. Do you have something special there? And we think we do.
I love it. I especially love the title. I mean, it's catchy, if nothing else, right? Zero sales, how to sell.
It's not what most people would promote inside of the kind of organization I've run throughout my career, but that was the intent, that it was a little catchy.
Yep. Yeah, no, I love it. And the philosophies I adhere to a lot too. I mean, I think just the concept of, you might get a small win, the disadvantage of someone else, but if that ruins the relationship long term, then you've really lost in the long run.
And that's really the point, right? Like, you can take a transactional view of the world, which is a short-term view of the world, and if you're in the wrong kind of an organization, or I shouldn't say the wrong kind, culturally, certain organizations are very focused on short-term goals, and maybe it's because of the stock price or whatever, and I certainly would not argue with that. But there's a different path that is not necessarily, that sometimes means you give up on that short-term transaction, and that's not always easy to do when you have a quota or target. It's a different way to view it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I want to let's do this. Let's talk about what are the major key takeaways you want folks to get from this conversation about Next League, or about Zero Sales, or about just business in general.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that what we want people to understand is that we understand that this new environment is extraordinarily complex, and that we have hired a really, really smart group of people who are focused on simplifying a lot of that. And again, taking that knowledge and putting it into the right context for whomever it is that we're dealing with. The other thing that I would promote here is not only the result. So we're a results-oriented organization, right? When we get into a deal, we talked about taking a long-term view of a relationship. When we get into a deal, we always want to focus on over-delivering, doing more than we said we were going to do. But what we found is that it's not only whether you or not you can deliver that result, but whether or not you can deliver a great experience getting to that result, right? What is the day-to-day working environment like? Are you surrounding, are we surrounding with our clients with people that are a cultural fit for them, that they feel like they're learning from and that are truly helpful? We think, as simple as that concept sounds, it's not very common. It's not very common to make it a primary focus of the business. So we think that matters, and we think the piece where we're really focused on assembling parts as opposed to selling products or platforms makes a difference. So to the extent that folks need help thinking about problems, want some form of thought leadership, or just need a group of really smart people with a ton of experience in technology to help them build and or support platforms, we're real good at that.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been great, Dave. I'm going to get you out of here on one more question we're going to talk through for a few minutes, I think. But everyone in the audience, make sure you check out Next League and Dave and his team. Best of luck with everything. Here's my last question that we'll talk through, Dave. And it's kind of one that's going to require that you put on your prognosticator hat. But let's talk about what you think the most impactful sports technologies will be over the next 2 to 3 years. And maybe let's come up with 2 or 3 that you think are important.
Oh boy. Okay. So I'll start with the general topic, which is decentralized everything, right? When you talk about blockchain and by extension, NFTs and crypto and everything else, the general idea of decentralized ecosystem, including decentralized applications, is really, really important and will become more important over time. That is going to present both real challenges to the old world ecosystem and a tremendous amount of opportunity to the types of clients that we've had for many years. But understanding the way that will work and the impact on the business is going to be impactful. The other topic, obviously, that comes up all the time, to a point where $1 trillion social media platform renamed themselves Meta, is the idea of the metaverse. And I would just say, look, I'm not bashing Facebook in saying this. Facebook has, I believe, just under 1 billion monthly active users. But it's a very successful business, but it's an advertising platform and it's a social platform with advertising, right? That's the model. I would look at a company like Unity Technologies, whose technology from a gaming perspective runs inside of 5 billion applications today. They also have just under 3 billion monthly active users. And in a way, they're a decentralized approach to this, right? Like, their ecosystem is empowering people to create unbelievable content experiences. I don't know if you saw, but they just bought Weta Digital, which is Peter Jackson's company. The ability for normal people to go out and create unbelievable experiences inside this new world, I think is going to be unbelievably important. With all due respect to Mark Zuckerberg, that's a second one that I think bears keeping an eye on.
Dave Nugent from Next League, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. To everyone else, enjoy the rest of the event.
Thanks, Dan.